can't believe it. I failed again. Well, I guess I'm just not smart enough. Imagine if we had $1 for every time every person in this life, present or past, have said those two statements that I just mentioned. Do you think we'd be rich today? Can you remember the very last time you failed at something? Failure may have come in that of sports, school, education, relationships, etc. The list goes on. Are you able to reflect back on how that failure made you feel? Are you able to remember how it may have changed your life or how you responded? What did you actually do about that failure? These are just a few questions that in dealing with failure, we must get answers to. As for me, I'm constantly reminded of how I was denied promotion to the 3rd grade some years ago. Wow. When I was in elementary school. But throughout the years and up to this point now, I can gladly and happily say that because of that failure in 2nd grade, that was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me academically. As of now, having accomplished such things as making the Dean's List in college and even writing my first book and having it published. So for the next few minutes, I just want to share with you real quickly on some positive steps, positive sides that we can mentally cling to in regards to dealing with failure. 3 of the areas that I want to talk about real quickly are: 1, understanding how failure can help us expose our weaknesses. Number 2, understanding how failure can help us to realize that we need to ask questions from failure. And number 3, understanding what we need to expect from others after we fail. Let's begin by first talking about understanding the need to realize that failure can help expose our weaknesses. As I look back in my denial of being promoted to the 3rd grade, I began to clearly see that there were personal weaknesses that I had as a student. And going on to see those weaknesses helped me to realize and to become a better student for the system of learning. Many times when we fail in life, we get frustrated and sometimes so mentally displaced, we don't care to carefully look at why we fail in order to see our weaknesses. Seeing and understanding our weaknesses and our failure, we should try to appreciate the failure instead of depreciating it. When I look back at my failure in 2nd grade, I realized that I wasn't studying as hard as I should have been. I wasn't putting forth an effective effort in studying outside of the classroom. And normally when I would get home, I would rush to do my homework as quickly as I could, if I had any, and then go play. I later realized that doing my homework is good, but what's even better was trying to study my homework. Yeah. And I also realized that I was being more focused on trying to remember what to do versus trying to understand what to do. There was a difference. Just because you remember something does not mean you understand it. But when you remember a subject, when you understand a subject matter, remembrance is guaranteed. Come on. Yeah. So you have now heard of some weaknesses that I experienced as I have thought of in the years to come, years that passed during my 2nd grade misfortune there. When I realized also that failure causes us to need for asking questions. And when I realized in 2nd grade that I was afraid to ask my teacher questions, even though I knew I was having a bad and hard time understanding things, I now know that I was setting myself up for failure all along. When I realized this, I'm sure you all can agree to this, that in our lives we can all agree to a certain degree that there's always someone out there somewhere who knows and understands something a little bit more about the very thing that we're seeking to learn and accomplish in our life. Moreover, this truth is the grand reason why I know and believe that we should not hesitate in asking questions of those who know and understand a little bit more about things that we're looking at in regards to different subject matters. Failure demands to ask questions. In second grade, I can remember sitting in the classroom, looking around and not asking my teacher questions. And even when I would get home, it was the same system. I would never ask my mother questions, and even though I knew I was struggling in understanding things in school. But once, as I grew older, once I realized the power of asking a question, from this day forward, I have never hesitated in asking people questions again. There's a famous biblical verse in the King James Version in Matthew 7:7. It says, "Ask and it shall be given." I said that to say this: I have come to this truth, that if you want to learn more, you cannot be afraid to ask more. Without question, failure in any circumstance must motivate us to ask questions, which in turn allows us to get revelations on what we actually need from others to help us to move past our failures. During my learning experience in second grade, I come to this truth that neither my teacher nor my mother was aware that I was mentally struggling in school with my learning. I find it quite interesting that as thinking creatures, we are not given adequate attention as regards to our thinking systems, especially when we fail at something. The method of teaching that I can remember from my second grade teacher was this: this is how you do it, now do it. There was no getting acquainted with the way that I was thinking. Therefore, the teacher was not able to get me where I needed to be mentally for the learning process. And she did not know where I was mentally positioned for the learning process. That's important, knowing where a person is mentally positioned. So when it came down to my mother helping me at home, that was a whole different story. My mother was a single parent, and she only had a 7th grade education. My mom's philosophy for all the kids in the house was this: do your homework or get a whooping. that was the philosophy. So technically, my mother just wasn't educated enough to help troubleshoot my understanding problems. And so that was the way that went. But today I can truly say that because of that experience and me understanding what I needed from those people, I can say today that I put a high demand on parents and teachers in regards to how a part they play in people's lives in regards to helping them to grow to learn. It has been my pleasure to briefly speak with you on some particular positives that we can gain from our failures. In that of learning about our weaknesses, learning that failure should help us to ask questions, and also understanding what we can expect from others and what part we need to play in our lives during our failures. So at the end of the day, after the failure, don't hesitate to take time to learn from each failure. Because a failure defined is this: an omission of an occurrence or performance. Don't fail to understand the failure. Thank you.